Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you all, and it's also good to see everybody joining us on the live stream as well. I can't quite get used to the fact that I'm talking to people in person and also behind a TV screen somewhere, so welcome everybody. Today is our second week in our 3-week series on Lamentations, on Lament, these 5 poems from the Old Testament. And these were actually part of a festival. There was 5 key Jewish festivals, and one of the festivals was based around Lamentations, and it was about being sorrowful and working through the pain of the sense of loss of losing the temple in about 586 BC, something like that. And it became a really key part of Judaism once a year that they would lament. And so when we were building this series, we didn't want you to just be taught about it. We wanted you to experience Lamentations. So today's going to be a little bit different. We explained this a little bit last week. Last week was a little bit of teaching into the context. This week we're just going to read it. These are 5 poems, and we're going to read all 5 poems. And so we're going to have a time of worship, and then Alice will come and read poem 1 and 2, and then we'll have a bit of time of reflection, and then Innes will read poem 3 and 4, and then at the end we're going to read the 5th one, which is the shortest one, all together, just at the end as we finish. So that's how we're doing it. And I just wanted to give you just a quick reminder of the key themes that we pulled out last week from Lamentations. This whole idea that grief can be really messy, and that everybody's experience of grief is very different, and everybody's experience of the last 18 months in the pandemic is very, very different. And so each person's experience is valid, but there are kind of what I suggested were 4 main themes that came out of this last week. The first one is that grief and loss are universal experiences. So you don't get to be human and not experience grief and loss. It's part of us. Secondly, each person's experience of grief and loss is unique to them and very valid to them, and we need to be aware of that. There's a corporate nature to grief, as we have experienced in the pandemic, but there's a unique part of it, and everybody's experience has been slightly different. Thirdly, and this is the bit that's been working on me the most, is the book of Lamentations is a progression, and that's why we built it over 3 weeks, and maybe an unraveling is a better word for it. The more you read it and the more you get into it, the more you feel unraveled, and you feel like, actually, I've got to the end of myself and I don't know what to do. That was how the Jews felt. This is a meditation on how loss can actually lead to someone completely falling apart and unraveling. And the 4th one is the book of Lamentations is centered, the center part of it is on God's unfailing love. His unfailing love to us in whatever circumstances that we find ourselves in. It's also not just his unfailing love to us, but also his unfailing love towards people we have hurt as well. And as I've prayed through and reflected on this for months and months, the verse that God keeps bringing back to me, and we will sing about it again this morning, is Lamentations 3. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed. We will not be burned up through this. We will get through this. For his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. He is a faithful God. And you will feel and sense some of the rawness of this morning. I'm warning you, because I've just been through the last service. And it will feel tough, but God is with us in it. Let's just pray together as we get started. God, I thank you that you meet with us where we're at, and that you don't paper over things, that you delve down into the depth of our pain with us. And we just want you, Holy Spirit, to be able to do your work through this poetry this morning. And we invite you here this morning to be with us. Amen.
Good morning. Let's stand and worship God together this morning.
Louder than the unbelief.
just going to ask Alice to come up and read the first two poems to us, Lamentations 1 and 2. It's going to take Alice probably about 10 minutes to do that. So just I want you just to sit into that, rest into that, and ask yourself while she's reading, what is God highlighting to you through the reading of these two poems? And then we'll have just a time of silence for 2 or 3 minutes or 4 minutes when she's finished reading. So Alice, over to you.
Okay, let's read together. How deserted lies the city, once so full of people. How like a widow is she who once was great among the nations. She who was queen among the provinces has now become a slave. Bitterly she weeps at night. Tears are on her cheeks. Among all her lovers, there's no one to comfort her. All her friends have betrayed her. They have become her enemies. After affliction and harsh labor, Judah has gone into exile. She dwells among the nations. She finds no resting place. All who pursue her have overtaken her in the midst of her distress. The roads to Zion mourn, for no one comes to her appointed festivals. All her gateways are desolate. Her priests groan. Her young women grieve, and she is in bitter anguish. Her foes have become her masters, her enemies are at ease. The Lord has brought her grief because of her many sins. Her children have gone into exile, captive before the foe. All the splendor has departed from daughter Zion. Her princes are like deer that find no pasture. In weakness they have fled before the pursuer. In the days of her affliction and wandering, Jerusalem remembers all the treasures that were hers in days of old. When her people fell into enemy hands, there was no one to help her. Her enemies looked at her and laughed at her destruction. Jerusalem has sinned greatly and so has become unclean. All who honored her despise her, for they have all seen her naked. She herself groans and turns away. Her filthiness clung to her skirts. She did not consider her future. Her fall was astounding. There was none to comfort her. Look, Lord, on my affliction, for the enemy has triumphed. The enemy laid hands on all her treasures. She saw pagan nations enter her sanctuary, those you had forbidden to enter your assembly. All her people groan as they search for bread. They barter their treasures for food to keep themselves alive. Look, Lord, and consider, for I am despised. Is it nothing to you, all you who pass by? Look around and see. Is any suffering like my suffering that was inflicted on me, that the Lord brought on me in the day of his fierce anger? From on high he sent fire, sent it down into my bones. He spread a net for my feet and turned me back. He made me desolate, faint all the day long. My sins have been bound into a yoke. By his hands they were woven together. They have been hung on my neck, and the Lord has sapped my strength. He has given me into the hands of those I cannot withstand. The Lord has rejected all the warriors in my midst. He has summoned an army against me to crush my young men. In his winepress, the Lord has trampled virgin daughter Judah. This is why I weep and my eyes overflow with tears. No one is near to comfort me, no one to restore my spirit. My children are destitute because the enemy has prevailed. Zion stretches out her hands, but there is no one to comfort her. The Lord has decreed for Jacob that his neighbors become his foes. Jerusalem has become an unclean thing among them. The Lord is righteous, yet I rebelled against his command. Listen, all you peoples, look on my suffering. My young men and young women have gone into exile. I called to my allies, but they betrayed me. My priests and my elders perished in the city while they searched for food to keep themselves alive. See, Lord, how distressed I am. I am in torment within, and in my heart I am disturbed, for I have been most rebellious. Outside the sword bereaves, inside there is only death. People have heard my groaning, but there is no one to comfort me. All my enemies have heard of my distress. They rejoice at what you have done. May you bring the day you have announced so that they may become like me. Let all their wickedness come before you. Deal with them as you have dealt with me because of all my sins. My groans are many, and my heart is faint. How the Lord has covered daughter Zion with the cloud of his anger. He has hurled down the splendor of Israel from heaven to earth. He has not remembered his footstool in the day of his anger. Without pity, the Lord has swallowed up all the dwellings of Jacob. In his wrath, he has torn down the strongholds of daughter Judah. He's brought her kingdom and its princes down to the ground in dishonor. In fierce anger, he has cut off every horn of Israel. He has withdrawn his right hand at the approach of the enemy. He has burned in Jacob like a flaming fire that consumes everything around it. Like an enemy, he has strung his bow. His right hand is ready. Like a foe, he has slain all who were pleasing to the eye. He has poured out his wrath like fire on the tent of daughter Zion. The Lord is like an enemy. He has swallowed up Israel. He has swallowed up all her palaces and destroyed her strongholds. He has multiplied mourning and lamentation for daughter Judah. He has laid waste his dwelling like a garden. He has destroyed his place of meeting. The Lord has made Zion forget her appointed festivals and her Sabbaths. In his fierce anger, he has spurned both king and priest. The Lord has rejected his altar and abandoned his sanctuary. He has given the walls of her palaces into the hands of the enemy. They have raised a shout in the house of the Lord as on the day of an appointed festival. The Lord determined to tear down the wall around daughter Zion. He stretched out a measuring line and did not withhold his hand from destroying. He made ramparts and walls lament. Together they wasted away. Her gates have sunk into the ground. Their bars he has broken and destroyed. Her king and her princes are exiled among the nations. The law is no more, and her prophets no longer find visions from the Lord. The elders of daughter Zion sit on the ground in silence. They have sprinkled dust on their heads and put on sackcloth. The young women of Jerusalem have bowed their heads to the ground. My eyes fail from weeping. I am in torment within. My heart is poured out on the ground because my people are destroyed, because children and infants faint in the streets of the city. They say to their mothers, "Where is bread and wine?" as they faint like the wounded in the streets of the city, as their lives ebb away in their mother's arms. What can I say for you? With what can I compare you, daughter Jerusalem? To what can I liken you that I may comfort you? virgin daughter Zion. Your wound is as deep as the sea. Who can heal you? The visions of your prophets were false and worthless. They did not expose your sin to ward off your captivity. The prophecies they gave you were false and misleading. All who pass your way clap their hands at you. They scoff and shake their heads at daughter Jerusalem. Is this the city that was called the perfection of beauty, the joy of the whole earth? All your enemies open their mouths wide against you. They scoff and gnash their teeth and say, "We have swallowed her up. This is the day we have waited for. We have lived to see it." The Lord has done what he planned. He has fulfilled his word, which he decreed long ago. He has overthrown you without pity. He has let the enemy gloat over you. He has exalted the horn of your foes. The hearts of the people cry out to the Lord. You walls of daughter Zion, let your tears flow like a river. Day and night, give yourself no relief, your eyes no rest. Arise, cry out in the night, as the watches of the night begin. Pour out your hearts like water in the presence of the Lord. Lift up your hands to him for the lives of your children who faint from hunger at every street corner. Look, Lord, and consider. Whom have you ever treated like this? Should women eat their offspring, the children they have cared for? Should priest and prophet be killed in the sanctuary of the Lord? Young and old lie together in the dust of the streets. My young men and young women have fallen by the sword. You have slain them in the day of your anger. You have slaughtered them without pity. As you summoned to a feast day, so you summoned against me terrors on every side. In the day of the Lord's anger, no one escaped or survived. Those I cared for and reared, my enemy has destroyed.
Let's just take 3 or 4 minutes just to reflect on our own. You may want to close your eyes. Dennis is going to come and read poem 3 and 4 to us now.
Thank you, Stuart. The translation I'm going to read from is one that attempts to adhere more to the original Hebrew, and some of it may sound a little unusual to your modern ear. It's an acrostic poem, so it goes through the letters of the Hebrew alphabet and in each stanza. So, reading the third poem of Lamentations. Agonies. I know their searing from the rod of his wrath. Away he has driven, force marched me, in darkness no light. Against me he turns his hand, from day dawn to dusk. Breaking my bones, he has wasted my flesh and my skin. Besieged by him, he caged me by bitterness, hardship. Bound by him in darkness, to dwell as the long dead. Confined, inescapably walled, he chained me and weighted me. Cry though I into the void, he blanks out my prayer, confounding my walkway with boulders. He twisted my paths. Dangerous as quiet lurking bear, like prey stalking lion, dragging from my pathway, he ripped me and desolate made me. Drawing his bow, he propped me, for his arrows a target. Eviscerated he my innards with the shafts of his quiver, excoriated to my kinsfolk a laughingstock, their taunt tune the day long. Engorging me, force-feeding bitterness, he sated me with gall. Fracturing my teeth on the gravel, he ground me in dust. Far from my mind any peace, I forgot what is good. Fled, dregs of honour, and gone, all I'd hoped for in the Lord. Gall, ah, bitter remembrance of my affliction, my wandering. Grief downcasts my soul in its pained recollection. Glimmering, though, to heart dawns a faint, far off hope. Habitual, though his compassions, the Lord's love never fails us. His mercies renew each day dawning. How great is your faithfulness. Hope, then, in him. May I say, my portion is the Lord. Irreproachable is the Lord to his seekers, to those who quest for him. Irreproachable is our hoping in quietness for the Lord's saving rescue. Irreproachable is it to bear the yoke while in youth. Let him sit alone and in silence when the Lord has so directed. Let him bury his mouth in the dust. Perhaps yet may be hope. Let him offer his cheek to the assailant, take his fill of disgrace. Mankind's desertion by the Lord lasts not forever. Mercy and kindness will follow. His sorrow-born strike. Mean heart guides not his affliction of humanity's children. Neutering, foot-crushing all prisoners of earth, naysaying, denying our rights before the Most High, negating our crying for justice, the Lord would not bide. Ordering futures, who can make so should the Lord not decree? Out of God's mouth come not both disaster and good? Of what shall one living complain when punished for his wrong? Plumb our ways. Let us audit them, that we return to the Lord, palms aloft, hearts lifted, to God on high we say, perfidious we in sin and revolt, and you did not forgive. Retributive in anger you pursued us, slew us remorselessly. Raiment of cloud thick encloaks you, impervious to prayer. Repellent and filth you made us in the midst of the peoples. Snapping and gaping their mouths at us are all our enemies. Suffering ours. Terror and traps, ruin and destruction. Stream running tears from my eyes for the shattering of my people. Tears stream unbidden, no respite, unending, till out looks the Lord and sees from the heavens. Tumult I see grieves my soul for the daughters of my city. Uncaused is the enmity of those who ensnared me as a bird. Undone is my life in a pit dumped. As rocks they cast on me. Under water is my head whelmed. I thought, I am gone. Voiced I your name, Lord, from bottommost pit. Validate my plea. Close not your ears to my cry. Venturing close when I called you, you spoke. Do not fear. When you pleaded, O Lord, my cause, you redeemed my life. Win my case, O Lord. You have seen the wrong done to me. Witness, I beg, their vindictiveness, their scheming against me. You have heard, Lord, their insults, their scheming against me. Yonder, they mutter and prattle from day dawn to dusk. Your eyes see them, seated or rising, mocking me in songs. Zilch make their rewards, O Lord, for the work at their hands. Ziplock their cold hearts, your curse upon them. Zealously hunt them, destroy them under the heavens of the Lord. Alas, the gold, now dulled, finest gold, tarnished, the holy stones lie littered on every street corner. Beloved sons of Zion of gold weight worth, now counted as jugs of clay, work of any potter. Cubs, even of jackals, are breastfed nursed, but my people's daughter is cruel as the desert ostrich. Dry-thirsted, the infant's tongue glues to the palate. Babies beg for bread, but none is proffered. Embraced now on dung heaps are those once robed in purple. Those once feasting on sweetmeats lie destitute in alleys. Far more the deserts of my people than the penalty of Sodom, which had been in an instant erased, with no hand on her laid. Glistening as snow, once her princes whiter than milk, their limbs more ruddy than coral, their beauty as sapphire. How black, though, their faces are now, unrecognized in streets. Their skin has shrunk on their bones as desiccated wood. Impaling on sword, far better than piercing by famine, better to bleed from our wounds than be to starved of all food. See, large-hearted women's own hands cook their own children, their food, when my people's daughter was shattered. Meted out in full is the Lord's anger, his smouldering wrath. He has kindled a blaze in Zion that consumed her foundations. Not the kings of the earth, nor its people believed that an enemy or foe could pass through the gates of Jerusalem. Offences of prophets, the cause and the crimes of her priests, who had shed in the midst of the city the blood of the just. Polluted with blood, through the streets they grope blindly, so defiled with that blood that none dare touch the hem of their garments. Repulsive, away, is the cry. Unclean, do not touch. They fled, they drifted. The news rang, they've no place to rest. Scattered by the Lord himself, no longer he faces them. The priests are shown no honor, the elders no mercy. Teared eyes still pine, looking for help, but in vain. From our watchtowers we watched for a nation, but no rescue came. Unceasing, they stalked all our steps. Our streets no more ours. Our end drew near, our days gone, our end had come. Vicious and swifter than skyhawks came our pursuers, hot on our trail through the hills, ambushers of the desert. Wedged in their traps was our life breath, the Lord's own anointed, he in whose shade we had thought to dwell among the nations. You might rejoice now, Edom's daughter, gloating in Uz, but to you too the chalice shall pass, exposing you, drunk, shamed. Zion's daughter, your punishment ended, your exile is lifted. But you, Edom's daughter, found guilty, the Lord shall condemn.
In a few minutes' time, we're going to read the fifth poem out loud together, and the words will come up on the screen here. But firstly, I just want us again just to pause. Again, you might want to close your eyes and just ask yourself, where is God in this suffering that we've just heard about? And where has God been in my suffering over the last 18 months? So just as we close, let's read Lamentations 5 together. We're going to read from the NIV. And you can stand up if you want, or you can sit in your seats. And we'll just read it together. It'll be on the screen here. Remember, O Lord, what has happened to us. Look and see our disgrace. Our inheritance has been turned over to aliens, our homes to foreigners. We have become orphans and fatherless, our mothers like widows. We must buy the water we drink. Our wood can be had only at a price. Those who pursue us are at our heels. We are weary and find no rest. We submitted to Egypt and Assyria to get enough bread. Our fathers sinned and are no more, and we bear their punishment. Slaves rule over us, and there is none to free us from their hands. We get our bread at the risk of our lives because of the sword in the desert. Our skin is hot as an oven, feverish from hunger. Women have been ravished in Zion, and virgins in the towns of Judah. Princes have been hung up by their hands, elders are shown no respect. Young men toil at the millstones, boys stagger under loads of wood. The elders are gone from the city gate, the young men have stopped their music. Joy is gone from our hearts, our dancing has turned to mourning. The crown has fallen from our head. Woe to us, for we have sinned. Because of this, our hearts are faint. Because of these things, our eyes grow dim. For Mount Zion, which lies desolate, with jackals prowling over it. You, O Lord, reign forever. Your throne endures from generation to generation. Why do you always forget us? Why do you forsake us so long? Restore us to yourself, O Lord, that we may return. Renew our days as of old, unless you have utterly rejected us and are angry with us beyond measure. Let's just pray together. God, these readings this morning are raw. They're really hard to hear. It's difficult for us as a culture to reflect and to look back and to look at our pain. And God, we just ask through your Holy Spirit that you'd help us to reflect on the pain that we've experienced in the last 18 months, either as a direct cause of the pandemic or other things that have happened in our lives, health things that have happened in our lives. God, we know that you don't promise us that we wouldn't be people that suffer. We know that that is part of the human condition. But we just praise you and worship you this morning that you dwell with us in our suffering and you come alongside us in our suffering. And I pray that you would help us to be more reflective and to spend more time with you and allow you to heal us. We acknowledge this morning, God, that there aren't easy answers. And we just ask you to help us and meet us where we're at this morning. In your name. We're just going to take a time just to sing, just as we end. But before I do, I just want to reflect again that this is a progression, this series, and we just really wanted to read the whole thing together today so that you could feel the weight of it and experience the weight of it. But I want you to hold on to the verse. Lamentations 3:22 and 23. The steadfast love of the Lord never fails us. His mercies are new every day, and that he is faithful to us, and that he'll walk with us through what we're experiencing. And next week is your opportunity to be engaged in the service. And I've already had people that have submitted poetry to us. You may have songs, you may have art, you may have testimony. One of the coolest things or most impactful things on me coming out of the pandemic when we started to meet here was when the home groups came together and we had an open mic and people gave testimony to their pain and they gave testimony to God's faithfulness. And so we're going to have an opportunity to do that next week as well as having communion together. I'm aware that this is pretty raw for some people. And so we want to offer prayer at the end of this service. And so if you would like prayer for where you're at right now, me and one or two others will be in the corner over here and we'd love to pray for you. But let's just sing together as we finish the service.
The splendor of the King, clothed in majesty, let all the earth rejoice, all the earth rejoice. He wraps himself in light, darkness tries to